The orientation of racing pigeons is a question that fascinates scientific researchers as well as pigeon fanciers, always admiring the weekly exploits of their protégés. In this video, we will see in more detail about recent discoveries linking vision and the magnetic sense in pigeons. The carrier pigeon is a fascinating bird. Wherever it is released, it always returns to its dovecot. How does this bird manage to position itself at the time of release, orient itself, cover hundreds of kilometers in the unknown, and arrive right above its dovecot after only a few hours of racing? How does it manage to find its way back and cover more than 1,000 kilometers in the day, sometimes flying at more than 120 kilometers per hour? How does he orient himself? How is this bird able to identify the direction it should take at any time? The exact answers are still unknown and fiercely debated among researchers. The bird would use several elements to find its way: the direction indicated by the sun, the magnetic field, the visual cues, the smells. To find out more about what happens in the bird's brain, researchers and research teams are working on several projects every day to unveil all its mysteries. The carrier pigeon must accumulate experiences and get to know the surroundings. It flies a lot and probably uses landmarks such as rivers, mountains, or highways to orient itself. He designs a kind of landscape map in their brain. If he is far from home and does not know anything about the region where he is, the carrier pigeon can recognize the time of day and orient itself thanks to the position of the sun and the stars. He can perceive and use the Earth's magnetic field, which is very useful on cloudy days. Smells, too, help them find their way. When he arrives in regions he knows, he uses his memory card to navigate whatever the weather conditions. The pigeon has 3 highly developed navigation systems: sight, perception of Earth's magnetic field, and olfaction. Of the sight, the pigeon uses the position of the moon, the sun, and the stars in the sky. This is proven thanks to experiments carried out in planetarium. If it is a course that the pigeon knows well, it also uses landmarks on the ground, hills, rivers, road, etc. during the day and when the weather is clear. Some pigeons follow the routes traced by man, even if it is not the most direct path. It would seem that, in fact, they simply take advantage of the updrafts produced by the heating of the pavement in summer. A perception of the Earth's magnetic field the pigeon has at the base of the skull, and in the neck muscles particles of iron oxide, magnetite grains, which form the equivalent of a compass. They move in function of the Earth's magnetic field and stimulate certain nerves in the brain. Moreover, if you attach a magnet that scrambles the magnetic data on the pigeon, it has trouble finding its way. Migratory birds, bees, dolphins, sea turtles also use the Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves. Olfaction. Pigeons use the smells carried by the wind as cues. The role of the sense of smell is not easy to highlight, but pigeons whose nostrils are blocked or whose olfactory nerve is not functional have orientation difficulties. It also happens that carrier pigeons make small detours on the road, attracted by the smell of wild pigeons. In fact, once released, the carrier pigeon has only one thing in mind: to return to its home loft. It begins by making a circle several hundred meters in diameter for a few minutes, as if to find its bearings. Then it heads towards its nest. Depending on the flight conditions, it favors one of its senses to orient itself. Several scientific studies and research have suggested that the internal compass of the bird was at the level of its beak, a theory now challenged by a team of Austrian researchers. There is more and more evidence to say that the pigeon has a real navigation system in its head. Like a GPS, it is able to record magnetic field values, but also visual cues and olfactory cues, according to French researchers from the Strasbourg Research Institute who took part in this study. Until then, research had suggested that pigeons locate themselves in the Earth's magnetic field thanks to nerve cells located in the skin covering the upper part of their beaks. These cells, which contain crystals of magnetite and iron oxide, would make them sensitive to magnetism. This hypothesis is now swept away by neuroscientist David Keyes, a researcher at the Institute of Molecular Pathology in Vienna, Austria, and his colleagues. These scientists proved that the iron-rich cells in the beaks of pigeons are actually macrophages, or immune system cells, and not neurons, or nerve cells. Moreover, the number and the distribution of these cells vary from one bird to another, which makes their role in their magnetic sensitivity not very credible. Another study led by Dr. Lipp from the University of Zurich, who thinks he has found another explanation. According to him and his colleagues, pigeons use Earth's gravity to find out where they are. According to this theory, carrier pigeons would therefore be able to detect gravitational anomalies caused by mineralized bodies or meteor craters. To put this theory into practice, the researchers chose Ukraine. There are important and well-known gravitational anomalies such as the one near Kirovograd, caused by a crater 25 kilometers in diameter dating from the Cretaceous. In a series of experiments, GPS-equipped carrier pigeons were released from the center of the crater, 91 kilometers from their loft. A control group was released from a point far from the crater at an equivalent distance from the dovecot. For the pigeons that left the crater, the return home was difficult. Influenced by the gravitational anomaly, they took circuitous routes instead of the straight line to return. Conversely, the pigeons of the control group encountered few difficulties in returning to the loft. According to experts, this experiment would prove that gravity plays a role in the ability of pigeons to locate themselves. But exactly how it works in the brains of pigeons is still a mystery. Dr. Lipp's hypothesis is that pigeons have something similar to a gyroscope in their brains. This biological navigation tool would allow the pigeon to determine the route to follow between the place where it is and the one it seeks to reach. To go further in his research, Dr. Lipp also wants to study the influence of lunar gravity on the navigating skills of pigeons. This study was featured in the journal Experimental Biology. Another research conducted by the team of Dr. Alexei Vysotsky from the University of Zurich, Switzerland, has designed a new device, the Neurologger, which combines an electroencephalogram and GPS. The researchers thus had two key pieces of information: the recording of the electrical activity of the brain of the pigeons and their location. Before letting them fly freely, the researchers recorded the brain activity of caged pigeons, pigeons flying over the sea and then over a familiar landscape. Brain activity recorded in mid-frequencies is associated with the perception of visual cues, while high frequencies appear to be linked to the recognition of more complex cognitive locations of memory, suggests Dr. Vysotsky and his colleagues. It is likely that all of these elements come together. It is difficult to highlight them because one pigeon is not the other. Sometimes we even lose pigeons, experienced without knowing the reason. On the other hand, it happened to send pigeons that had never traveled directly 300 kilometers, and they returned to the loft. There is still work to be done to unlock all the secrets of carrier pigeons, because these outstanding navigators do not hesitate to use, as we also know, other techniques: memorization of landmarks on the ground, measurement of the position of the sun of the moon, sun and stars in the sky, and even the olfactory sense. All of these methods are used, in varying proportions, by other animals, migrating birds, insects, marine mammals, salmon, etc.